Amplified just got to a place where women could come and get inspired and empowered in a non-invasive and a safe space where our voice is celebrated and amplified.
Entrepreneurs Vibes, the podcast that gives insight into the minds of visionary entrepreneurs and business leaders. Brought to you by The Right Direction, a leading professional and technical writing company based in North America. Each episode, we explore stories and experiences of those who dared to dream, took the leap, and built their own empires. Join us in uncovering the secrets to success and lessons learned along the way. So if you're just starting out your entrepreneurial journey or you're already a seasoned business pro, you'll find inspiration, knowledge, and good vibes right here. Today, we're thrilled to have a remarkable guest whose work transcends boundaries and empowers a global community. She is a speaker, writer, coach, and the visionary founder of Black Women Amplified, a dynamic lifestyle brand dedicated to amplifying the voices and experiences of Black women. Our guest honed her business acumen across diverse industries, from beauty to publishing and music. Her work has seen her collaborate with global brands and industry leaders, all while maintaining a deep commitment to empowering others. Today, we'll dive deep into her incredible journey, the mission behind Black Women Amplified, and how she's helping women around the world live their lives with passion, purpose, and power. Get ready for an inspiring conversation with a true visionary, and welcome to the show, Monica Wisdom. Hi, Monica.
Hi. Oh my God, I'm so grounded by that introduction. Thank you.
Of
I need to
course.
have that on my phone. People call.
Oh, please. It would be our delight to be featured in your amazing platform and your website. Thank you so much for being here today. How are you doing?
Thank you. I am doing very well, very well.
It's
How
great.
are you?
I'm really great, and I'm so excited to, ask you so much about entrepreneurship and leadership today. So thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Could you share a little bit about your upbringing? You're from St. Louis, and how would you say living and growing up there influenced your entrepreneurial journey?
St. Louis is an entrepreneur city. So I grew up, my dad was an entrepreneur. So I grew up going to work with him as a little girl and watching him do his thing. He had a pharmacy and he had a convenience store. And the front, I always say he was Walgreens before Walgreens. He was CVS before CVS. He had the pharmacy in the back and a convenience store in the front. And so I was with him, every opportunity that they had, because he, as an entrepreneur, especially when you have a freestanding business, you're working all the time. So if I wanted to see my daddy, I was going to work with him. And then there were times when I would help him with not doing pharmaceutical work, but I would work the front register. I tell people I started working at 9 years old, the front register, and I could sell everything but cigarettes. And it was a big old-fashioned machine with the big brass buttons. And it quickly taught me how to do math, and I could count backwards from $1 in 5 seconds. So he was teaching me along the way. So I grew up in entrepreneurship, truly.
Would you say that that was your first experience in entrepreneurship, working with your dad and seeing him?
Oh, 100%, 100%, because he had his whole staff was there. So I would have to help this person or that person, or if I was bored, I would just watch what they were doing. So I got to learn different aspects of business. Although I was observing, he didn't necessarily teach me the business. It was more through osmosis than do this or do that, because he was figuring it out himself. At that time, my father was raised in, I know you're in Canada, but raised in segregation and Jim Crow. So the only way that people like my dad could have work was to create it for themselves, because companies were not hiring Black people, especially Black men and Black women. Black women had a different path, but Black men, they were not hiring in companies. So they had to create their own businesses. So many Black men of his era were entrepreneurs. If they weren't in entrepreneurs, they were in education or medicine. So there was only really three paths that they could take. And he was a pharmacist. He couldn't be hired in a hospital or any of the businesses that had pharmacies. So he had to start his own. And he couldn't even get a loan to buy his business. He actually bought his business on layaway. And so he bought it from a white man, and the white man allowed him to make payments until he paid off his business loan. So that's how he started his business. And so that was my first introduction to it, was you got to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, he really is a trailblazer, as you could say.
Mm.
And I love that you referenced that you were watching your father work as a pharmacist, an entrepreneur, and he was also a community leader. And how did that all impact your views on business and entrepreneurship later in life? How did you find your own way and found what you think is your passion?
When I started on my entrepreneur journey, it was through cosmetology. And it wasn't, this I'm going to go take over the world type of thing. It was a situation where my mother had passed away. And in America, you got a survivor's check. And in order to extend the survivor's check, my father said, well, go to tech school and we could get the check for a year, because at that time his business was not doing well and we needed the money. So there were certain choices that I could get into with this technical school that would take me to high school an extra year. And there weren't many choices for girls. It was, you could do welding, you could do computer, and computer was just starting at that time because I'm Gen X. So computer, I didn't know anything about it. And I liked makeup and doing hair. So I chose cosmetology, but my intention was to go to school to be an accountant, although my father wanted me to be a doctor. But once I got into cosmetology, I fell in love with it. I felt like I found my people, I found my tribe, I found my creative, because I also have a creative side. My mom was a teacher, an educator. That was one of the few choices for women at that time, but she also had a passion for music. So we would spend our summers going to theaters, seeing musicals, and I loved the theatrics of all of it, from the hair, the makeup, the music, all the performances. So I picked cosmetology, but once I got into it, I fell in love with it. And I really excelled at it, because I tell people I have a scientific brain and I have a creative brain. So both of them work at the same time. And falling in love with cosmetology, I really got to pursue other things inside the industry, just beyond doing hair. That's when I started working for a global company as an educator, and then went on to become director of education. So I was able to pursue many avenues within cosmetology, freelance work, working with celebrities and things like that. So it became my tribe and my world, and I loved it for many, many years, 35 years to be exact. And so that was my entry into entrepreneurship for me.
That's really fascinating. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and they always say whether they started in corporate, they always have this creative side that really led them to starting
Mhm.
their own business. And I think it's kind of the same for you. I wanted to ask you,
Mm.
what was it that led to the transition from the beauty industry and then to education and then to publishing and music?
Writing had always been a passion. A dream of mine was to write for Essence magazine. And I didn't quite get there, but a friend, a now friend, a person at the time, approached me when he was starting a magazine and asked would I come and be a writer. And then I ended up being director of operations for his magazine. And we worked on it for about a year and a half. And it was amazing. I got to write stories. I got to interview people that I loved, interesting people, and I got to help shape the magazine. So writing has always been I always tell people writing is my first language, speaking is my second language. And when people read my writing, they're like, well, you don't sound like this. I'm like, I'm telling you, it's my first language. So that's how I got into writing, is that someone asked me, well, I've always been a writer. So I've written for newspapers and publications and different things like that. But that was one of the biggest positions that I've had in the writing field. But writing is really my first language.
And can you talk about the inspiration behind creating Black Women Amplified back in 2018?
Black Women Amplified started as the Black Female Factor. I was watching a news program around the time that Hillary Clinton was running for office. And there was a story on called The Female Factor. And they were asking questions what it meant for women to see Hillary run for office. There was not one woman of color or one Black woman included in that conversation. And that bothered me. It was like, we have opinions and perspectives too. So I said, well, if they're not going to talk to us, I'm going to talk to us. So it started off as a blog, and then it evolved into a podcast, and then evolved into a platform. And it just got to a place where I just wanted a place where women could come and get inspired and empowered in a non-invasive and a safe space where our voice is celebrated and amplified. So that's what inspired it, but it has grown since that initial idea.
And can you share the mission and vision behind Black Women Amplified, and has that changed since the inception and as it is today?
The vision and mission has not changed. The mission is to amplify the voices of Black women. It has expanded to around the world. The women that we have on the podcast are Latino women, women from Africa, British women, Jamaican women. So we have, I'm expanding out to the diaspora so that we can hear each other, because there's often a lot of factors that try and separate us out, like we're a different community. But I like to think that we're a part of a global majority, not this or that. We're all one family. So it has expanded in that way to cover people around the world. I'm even talking to people to come on the show that are in South Africa. So I'm hoping to expand it maybe to Canada,
Maybe,
different
yeah.
places, many places around the world. But the vision is to have I don't want to keep saying safe space, but we as Black women and women of color need safe spaces to be ourselves. And so the vision is always to create a space where we can be ourselves and explore who we are as women, and explore who we are at our place in the world, embrace our femininity and embrace our power, and go out in the world and just be our greatest selves.
I think it's a really great platform. And how would you say has it helped amplify the voices and experiences of Black women?
It has helped because it has given people who often go unheard a place to be heard, to share their stories, to share their insights and their perspectives in a way that media doesn't cover them. I mean, some of the women on that I've interviewed or have talked to or have worked with, because they're not dancing on a stage or playing a sport, they're often ignored. So it's important in any culture, to make sure that all voices are heard, to make sure that all stories are shared, and to ensure that people feel like they're acknowledged and seen. So that's what Black Women Amplified does. We acknowledge women, we honor them, we celebrate them, and I make sure that they know that they are seen. And that empowers women, because oftentimes we go through life, we do all the things, we go through the turmoil, the challenges, all the things. But the most hurtful thing is when you feel like people don't see you and don't acknowledge you. And when you feel invisible, then you become invisible. But when you're seen, you shine.
I definitely resonate with that. And I feel like a lot of women would too, because I think culturally we're just always the sex who tends to give more, and we tend to,
Mhm.
put our needs in the back burner. And I love what you said when you referenced Black Women Amplify the platform as a safe space, because essentially you do need community and like-minded women to hear from you and like learn from them. So I think it's an amazing platform what you've built. And I wanted to ask if there were any impactful stories or features that you can share with us about some of the people you've had on the platform.
I want to say this before I will answer the question, but I want to say this. Black Women Amplified, I want to be clear, it is not just for Black women, it is for all women, but it's from a Black woman's perspective. Oftentimes we hear everything from a white male perspective or a white female perspective. I just want to make sure that everybody knows, everybody can listen to the podcast, everybody can read the blog. It's not specifically, it's designed for Black women from our perspective, because often our voices do not go heard and nobody hears our perspective. We're seeing that now in our presidential election, as I'm sure that you all are paying attention to. But some of the inspiring stories, one of the most inspiring stories, there's been so many. Oh my gosh. There's two girls named Ivy and Jasmine, who are the first Black women to own a crystal mine in I think anywhere, but they own a crystal mine. And the story of how they received the mine was one of the most powerful manifesting stories that I've ever heard in my life. It was during the pandemic, and they lived in LA. One is a celebrity, she was a celebrity florist. So her clients were Kim Kardashian and the Smiths, Will and Jada Smith, and Miley Cyrus, and all these famous people. So she's the one, if they had a party, she would do all the flowers, and not just like bridal arrangements, like installations. And if they had Christmas, she would go decorate their home. Every holiday, she decorated their homes. So she spent her life making sure that their holidays were great, and they didn't have time with their own families. Then Jasmine is the daughter of a football star, Dr. J, and she had a philanthropic organization through football, helping young kids in urban environments. So pandemic happens, both of their businesses shut down. Nobody's decorating for Christmas during a pandemic, and nobody is doing any philanthropic work. So they decide to go to a retreat outside of California. They go on this retreat, and as they're driving, not a retreat, they just took a vacation. So they're going up in the mountains. As they're driving through the mountains, there was a man on the side of the road in a truck, a white man. This just sounds like a scary movie already. And they drive past, his car is stalled, and they were like, "Do you need a ride?" He hops in. And I was like, "Are y'all serious? It's two women and children riding in a car, and you pick up this strange man on the side of the road." Come to find out, this man is part of a crystal conglomerate. And through their friendship, it came to pass. People have to listen to Pop's podcast to get the details. But at the end, they were gifted a crystal mine from this group of people who had crystals. And not only is it a crystal mine, but it was owned by Tiffany and Company. So now they are crystal owners. They mine crystals, and they have a whole business around it. And it's amazing because it just how the story twists and turns. And I asked Jasmine, I said, "How did you learn how to receive?" Because as women, we often don't know how to receive. We can give all day long. And she said, "Monica, I had to pray on it. It was hard to take the gift." And she said, "I had to pray about being open to receive something, because her normal, just like we all do as women, "Oh no, I'm fine. Oh no, that's too much." So we don't take it in. So that was a remarkable journey. But there are several. Rochelle Carey, who is a global American broadcaster, came on to talk recently to talk about her journey from being an American broadcaster to giving up everything to become a mom at 49. So
Wow.
her biggest dream was to become a mom, and she had her own television show in Qatar. She had lived over there for 5 years, and her biggest dream was to have a child. And she went through all of the processes, the natural way, IVF, nothing was working, and she needed to adopt. And so the best way for her to adopt was to go home. So she went from living this big, huge life to living in an apartment above her parents' garage, just so she could adopt her son. So women are making extraordinary choices to live what they're passionate about. And so that's the story that I love to get out, is like, how did you get from, I don't want to know just about your accomplishments, but I want to know how you got there so that other women know that it's possible.
I love that. I love
That's
that
a long answer
story.
for your question.
No, I love that. Thank you so much. Because, like, I know it's like hard to share a story sometimes because it might be private, but it's amazing. And we'll definitely link your podcast below so everyone can listen to the full story. But I really love that, like the story of manifestation, because I feel like it's always us hindering ourselves from, like, okay, you might want something, but then you think, do I really deserve it? Or am I even ready for that? So I think, opening up and believing that you are worthy of receiving such a gift is really what opens doors for amazing things to happen to you. And I think that's how you help women, realize that by when they listen to you and read your things that you write. It's, to help them understand that, you know what, I should maybe put myself forward as well so that I can receive better, bigger things in my life. So I think that's amazing. Thank you for sharing those stories.
Oh, you're welcome.
Would you have any advice for someone who wanted to start their own platform that amplifies the voices of underrepresented communities?
Yes, I like to say unheard communities. Just do it. The most important thing is Don't just do it just to do it. Make sure that it connects to you. I could not do a platform for another group of women because it's not my story. So focus on your story, what's important to you, what has shifted in your life, the changes you've made, the challenges that you've had. Because typically, people in business will say, find your niche and just build out your niche, and find your audience and build out your audience. I come from a generation where we said, build it and they will come, because your tribe will find you. And so if you're specific about your tribe will find you. That's why I chose the name Black Women Amplified. I wanted Black women to know that there's a place here for you. So other people try and find a cutesy name, a fun name, pink power girls, but you outgrow those names. Be serious and really be intentional about everything that you do, from the branding, from your messaging, from the information that you put out, that it will really benefit your crowd. Because what'll happen is other people will come too. If there's a subject matter that you're passionate about, make sure that you're well versed on it, well researched about it, and be in integrity of whatever you do. Don't just put things out just for clicks and views. I see a lot of people do that, but that will burn you out. But if you love it and it has benefited you, put those messages out. But be very intentional about the people that you're talking to, so that they recognize themselves in your platform.
And how would you say your work as you created Black Women Amplified influenced your personal and professional journey?
Oh my goodness. I will say this. I started out on this journey scared completely. I had no idea. I've always, like many women, I've always been that background person. So I can help you build your stuff and do really, really well at that. And I'm fine. Like my best friend, she's opposite of me. She says, I prefer to remain stealth. So I was the same way. So putting myself out front was a huge leap for me. I'm introverted. I like my space. I like my time to myself. Now you want me to talk to people? Like, you want me to talk to a lot of people. And this is me talking to myself. And even though I've done it in different avenues, when I was director of education, I had to teach thousands of hairstylists, or if I was writing for a publication, I was writing for people. But to put me out front was a huge challenge. And so it was me talking to myself in the mirror every day. It was doing my affirmation. It was doing my self-care to build up my confidence. I was coaching myself. My girlfriends had to gather around me to say, you can do this. And so it took a whole team to put me out there. So what it has done for me is built my confidence. Now I'm talking to you. I wouldn't have done this 5 years ago. I would have felt like, what is she going to talk to me about? I don't have anything to offer, even though I've done all these great things in my life. I've had challenges. I've had all the things. But 5 years ago, I would have said, well, I would have declined. But because I built this platform and put myself out there, and I get to hear these women's incredible stories of how they put themselves out there, it showed me that I could do it too. So I did it, and little by little and bit by bit, it has built my confidence in a way that I feel completely unrecognizable than when I started in 2018.
I think that's amazing, and I feel like a lot of people will resonate with the fear of being seen, even the fear of being
Mhm.
heard, and so I think that's really great that you shared how you got over that and how you found your confidence throughout that process. And you were talking about some that being one challenge for you. Could you share maybe other challenges that you faced when you were starting your own business, and how did you overcome those challenges?
A lot of my challenges was getting clear. I'm a multi-gifted person, a multi-passionate person, but I really had to get clear, and I was all over the place. And anybody who's a creative knows that our brains think in a circle and we come up with new ideas every day. So it was really just saying, just do this and then move forward from there instead of 10,000 ideas. It's so interesting. I have notebooks and journals everywhere. I'm constantly writing, coming up with ideas, coming up with this and coming up with that. And it was about a month ago that I said, you know what? I'm throwing all of these ideas out. These ideas were created in the feeling of scarcity. These ideas were created in the feeling of not enough. These ideas were created in the feeling of I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. And so they're never going to work because the energy around them is not. So I put it all in a trash can. I threw it all out. And I said, God, bring me what you need me to have. Bring me the words, the ideas that you need me to put out. So I put God in it and took me out of it. And it was important that I did that because this whole platform is not about me. It's about the energy and the vibration and the love that God wants in the world through me. And so once I did that, I was able to get solid and clear about putting what was supposed to be out in the world through me. And so clarity was a big challenge for me, was a big challenge. And I'm sure it is for a lot of people, but getting crystal clear about what I'm putting out in the world was my other big challenge.
I agree. I think a lot of creatives out there or like people like you who are like jacks of all trades. Like it's hard to find
Mhm,
like the one direction where you can like focus all of that creative energy into putting something
mhm.
that can be tangible. So that's really great sound advice. Thank you. And I wanted to ask what else motivates or inspires you, like especially when you're facing obstacles in your entrepreneurial journey.
When I get stuck, I love to watch a great documentary. Documentaries inspire me because I love stories, like telling stories, sharing stories, hearing stories are one of my favorite things to do. So I will put on a documentary because we always see people's glory, but we don't see their challenges. And when I watch a documentary, I get to see the whole story of how they got, I get to see Z, we see Z, but we don't see D, F, K.
Mhm.
So that's what inspires me. And what also inspires me is my godchildren inspire me. And my young nieces and nephew inspire me. And that was when I started the podcast. It was during the pandemic. I had already been working on Black Women Amplified. It wasn't clear. But I got in the pandemic, my goddaughter, who just had, she had twins. And she was standing in front of me. And this was one of the first times that we were able to get back together physically. And she was holding her daughter. And her daughter was the same age as when I met her. And so I was in this, everybody's talking around me. And I think I went to another dimension. I was like, oh my God, like she has a child now. And so I looked at that baby and we're in the middle of this global mess. And I said, if I don't make it through this, she won't know me. So I started the podcast. My first season is all about me telling my stories, but I'm talking to that little girl so that if she had to grow up without me, I'm getting emotional. If she had to grow up without me, that she would know her Auntie Monica stories. So that's when I started the podcast. And then I put it out there. And then one day, HarperCollins, the publishing company reached out to me and asked would I interview one of their authors, Jane Allen. And that's when I started doing interviews. But that her first season was about me sharing my own stories. And so I tell women now, share your stories. You might think, well, who's going to listen to this? Everybody. You will be shocked 100 years from now, 200 years from now, 10 years from now. Somebody needs the lessons that you have already learned. And so, if it is nothing but putting out 10 episodes of how you grew up in whatever town you're from, tell that story. And so that's what inspires me is the stories of other people.
I think you can't hear that enough to have someone say, "Share your story." Like, just say it. People will listen. It's really hard
Mm,
because when you're dealing with internal thoughts of like not being worthy or like, why should I even do this? Like, that tends to be a little more amplified than like someone else saying that I would listen
mm.
or someone else will listen. So I think what is needed more in this age, especially a lot of people out there are still struggling with that. So I think it's really important. Even I would love hearing that. Like it really makes me feel better and about what I do too. So thank you. And you earlier you were talking about like, you grew up watching your dad being an entrepreneur. I wanted to ask, like,
Mm.
what is the role of mentorship played in your growth as an entrepreneur?
Oh, mentorship has been everything. I was raised to honor my elders, and I have always had a group of older people around, and I just sit and listen. And so mentorship has been everything to me because it wasn't actually until last year that I went to college. So I had to learn everything myself. And the way that I learned was listening to other people, asking questions, being curious. Um, even from, you know, even with Black Women Amplified, I do everything myself. I built the website myself. I do the graphics myself. I do everything but edit my podcast. And so all of that mentorship throughout the years put me in a place where I could know that I don't have to know how to do it for it to be done. And so I learned how to do things myself. And so I was able to, even throughout my career, I didn't know how to write for a magazine. But when somebody said, "Can you write an article?" Okay. I get on the internet, I learn how to write an article. So the one thing mentorship has done for me is to show me that I don't have to know how to do it for it to be done, because all you have to do is ask a question and people are willing to answer them. So mentorship is very, very important. And it keeps your mind like straight. It keeps you focused. When somebody asks you, what are your goals? And you go all the way to the left, they're like, let's push you back to your goals. So mentorship keeps you centered and keeps you focused on your path, because it's easy to go to the left or to the right, or shiny penny syndrome. Oh, they're successful. Let's do what they're doing.
Mhm. It's always really helpful to have someone to steer you in the right direction. So, yeah, I do
Mhm.
agree with that about mentorship. And how do you balance creativity with the practical aspects of running a business?
You have to put yourself on a calendar. You have to, when it's time to do certain aspects of business, you just have, this is my method. I have to sit down, cut out all the distractions, and say, this is the day for this. This is podcast day. This is paperwork work day. This is return email day. So in order for me to do something properly, I have to be able to fully focus on it. So I've learned that I can't multitask. I need to be very singular in what I'm doing. So it's very important for me to schedule myself out to do things, because normally I would be all over the place, just because that's just how my brain works. But everybody's different. Everybody has to find their method that works for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just all about like making time for everything and having a structure that really helps, especially like for creatives, like you said earlier, like you can be everywhere all at once. So having a structure, like a calendar, like a plan to follow and someone to look up to, that'll really, help you be in
Mhm.
a path of success. And speaking of success, what does success mean to you? And how has your definition of success evolved over time?
Oh my goodness, that's another hour. Success, it's really interesting. Success used to be about that American dream, but I've always been on the fringe of that American dream. I never wanted to be a wife. I never wanted to have a baby. And so, because of that, I felt on the fringe. And so, my success was, especially coming from the childhood that I came from, my success for me was always about peace, being happy, being joyful, and being in places where I felt safe and peaceful. But I did have ambitions. But as I reached those ambitions, it just seemed like it wasn't enough. So I had to find something else that felt more meaningful than my ambitions. And what that was truly connecting into understanding that I have innate ability to help people see themselves. And so once I tapped into that and built that into everything that I did, it redefined my idea of success. My idea of success is being able to spend time with my godchildren, to be able to spend time with my family, and to have the freedom to do that. So many years I missed out on that, chasing my ambitions. I wasn't available for my godson's games on Saturdays because I was working. I wasn't available to hang out with my family for the full vacation time because I was working. And so chasing work, I missed out on many opportunities. My godson just graduated from college. He's 24 now. And I'm like, I remember you sitting in my lap as a baby. And I just thought about how much I missed because I was chasing my ambitions. So I tell women now, create your lifestyle first and then build a business around your lifestyle. Because if you focus on just ambitions, you're going to miss out on life.
I wanted to ask you some advice on entrepreneurship. If there's anyone out there who wants to start their entrepreneurial journey, what would you say to them?
Inform yourself about your industry first that you want to get into. Learn as much as you can from as many people that you can. There are a lot of free services out there that you don't have to pay for coaches and you don't have to pay for mentors. Learn everything you can about business itself, the basics, the foundations. Once you know the foundations, you can build anything. It's like building a house. If the foundation isn't solid, then the house isn't going to be solid. So learn the basics first. There's plenty of books, there's plenty of websites, there's plenty of companies now that will teach you just the basics. You can go in the United States, there's the Small Business Association that you can study with. If you're in college, get a minor in business and economics, understand how money works, so you don't have to figure it out later. um, and that's what I can say. If you're going to start off on your path, do a lot of due diligence of understanding the industry that you're getting into. Oftentimes we think, oh, I have this idea, I want to do it. You put it out there and it fails. Failure is a good lesson, but oftentimes people fail because they didn't understand the industry they were getting into. For instance, if you love hair, but you're not a hairstylist, you don't know anything about the hair industry. Learn the industry. You don't have to go to cosmetology school, but really learn the industry from industry people, not product people. That's my thing right now, because I see so many people out there teaching that don't know anything about the basics of business. Learn the basics of business because it doesn't change regardless of what industry that you're in, whether you're selling books or you're selling nail polish. Business is business. So learn the basics.
And what would you say are like the common misconceptions about entrepreneurship that you would like to debunk?
Entrepreneurship is a special group of people. You have to be a special, and anybody can be an entrepreneur, but it is a different way of thinking than a corporate person. We typically see a problem, create a solution, and build out the solution. We're not trying to build an enterprise like a corporation, although we need corporate elements within our, but we are typically solution-driven people and we like to solve problems. And so our mindset is completely different than a corporate mindset. We don't even speak the same language. And when you think of entrepreneurs, you don't think about musicians and artists and mechanics. You don't think of them as solid business people, but some of the best business advice I've gotten from are the people who work at a comics shop or or a musician or an artist because they know people. So it's important that we understand that entrepreneurship. And the other thing, it's not easy and it's not glamorous. I just want to debunk that now. It looks so fabulous online, but when you become an entrepreneur, you are the corporation, which means you do everything. There's not a department, you are the department. There's not an HR department, you are HR. There's no room where you go to print your brochures. You are now the printer. You were the copywriter. You were the publicist. You were all the things. And I always tell people, if they're leaving corporate America, use corporate America as your classroom on how to do it, and then apply what you're doing to what they've already laid down as a foundation.
That's really great because I also hear a lot from people that, they leave their 9 to 5 to start their own business and then realize that now it's a 24/7 job that you have to do.
Yes. It is no longer 9 to 5. You no longer have vacation days. You don't have sick days.
Yeah.
That is not, it is not corporate American entrepreneurship are two complete, they're cousins, but they're not twins.
hmm Yeah, it goes hand in hand with what you said to learn the basics. I think if you really want to build something, you kind of have it's the best way to learn is to look to like a huge corporation and see how they do the basics because they really have like
Mhm.
solid foundations that allow them to be such huge, companies and corporations. So that does make a lot of sense. And it puts into perspective, you have to be a very special type of person to be able to do everything and have that like
Mm.
power to build your own business. And I wanted to ask you now about like the Soulful Success Coaching that you do offer. Could you give us an overview of what Soulful Success Coaching is and how it differs from other coaching programs?
What this coaching experience is about you aligning with what is valuable to you. Oftentimes, we build businesses and live lives based on what other people say that we should do. You should be a doctor, you should be a lawyer, what society says that we should do. And in doing that, we're not feeding our souls. We're not living our values. We're not living our passions or our purpose. So, Soulful Success is about getting back in touch with that part of you. And then, like I said before, deciding what you want your lifestyle to be. And then let's build a business around that. If you want to be a world traveler, how do you build a business so that you can do that? And it doesn't have to be a traditional business. It's about breaking away from traditions and creating your own. It's about living the life that you choose to live instead of the life society has told you that you were supposed to live. I come from Generation X. We didn't have many options of what you could do. We had very limited options. And now you can do anything and you can make money in many different directions. Now you get to decide what works for you. And so, Soulful Success Coaching is about centering yourself and expanding from there, as opposed to taking other people's ideas, beliefs, and values and then trying to figure that out. Because what is happening, and the reason that I started it, is there are so many women that are burnt out, exhausted, and feel lost in everything they're doing. Very successful, very ambitious, but something's not right. And what's not right is that you are missing from the life that you're living. So we want to first get back to you, what's important to you, and then build out whatever you want to do from there. Doesn't have to be starting a business. It could be writing a book. It could be starting a podcast. It could be starting a blog. It could be just traveling the world and documenting it. It could be maybe you've always wanted to write a movie. Okay, let's see how that works. So it's about exploring. It's part personal development, it's part self-discovery, and it's part business development. So that's what's unique about it is I look at people from a holistic perspective instead of just a piece of something. I don't want to just teach you how to do a podcast and because somebody said you should do a podcast. What do you really want to do? What do you want your life to reflect? What is the legacy that you want to build? So we look at all of that as well as your challenges. What has stopped you from doing this before? What are the roadblocks? What are the issues that keep holding you back? What are the cycles that you keep going through? What are the habits that you have that you need to break? So we look at women from a holistic perspective as opposed to just a piece of this or a piece of that.
And can you share any strategies to avoid burnout when you're pursuing either your entrepreneurial dreams or anything else that you want to pursue in life?
Put yourself first. Meaning that just like when you have a job, there's a time, there's a start and there's a finish. You have to create that for yourself. And I know this because I've done it. I can work on a project all day and there's nobody stopping me because I don't have a time clock. But I had to say, it's time to shut down. So when you are pursuing your dreams, make sure that you put yourself in your plan. When you're making your business plan, make sure that you put yourself in there as well. Schedule your vacation, schedule your time with your friends, schedule date night with your partner. Like all of that is a holistic look at your day, at your business model, because it includes your values and the life that you want to live. And so that's the shift is one thing I did when I started traveling Europe, the one thing that they do is they work to live, we live to work. So it's shifting that model into you're making money so that you can go experience life. Not you're making money so that you can have this list of accomplishments, because at the end of the day, none of those accomplishments matter. What matters is that you live the life that you wanted to live.
I really think that's a shift that a lot of people are realizing now, especially since the pandemic. That's why a lot of people have not gone back to corporate and just like there's been
Mm-hmm.
a lot of like people who started working from home, and now there's this whole movement of people realizing that, oh, we were so tethered to this structure in the past where we just had to like work 8 hours of our lives every single day until we retire, and then by then you're like old enough to even like experience life and have the energy. So I think it's like an important shift to talk about, and I think it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing that you get to coach people even in business. I had this like one financial advisor that I had on the podcast that said you have to plan your business, you even down to how much money you want to earn, because sometimes you think that what the business earns is your profit, but it's technically not. And then you realize, oh, I'm not actually making money. So these are things you have to like really plan out. So I wanted to ask, like, how does the program help participants reconnect with their core values and realign their lives and businesses?
Well, we start with the person. So I have a process called the MVP process that I take people through, where we go through steps of where you are now, and we look at where you are now honestly, no judgment with anything. And then I have people look out, where do you want to be in 10 years? Right? What is your vision for your life? Because I think visioning is a very important part of the process of any life, even if you're talking about a business. What is your vision for your business? But because I look at everything from a holistic perspective, what is the vision for your life? And your life, not the life of your kids, your parents, any of that. We strictly focus on the person themselves. Because if women are happy, everybody else is taken care of. We know that. So that's always a challenge, because it's hard for women to just look at themselves. And then we create a game plan from that. And it's not really, I don't want to call it a goal plan, but it's a life plan. And so that once we figure out, okay, this is where you are now, this is where you want to be, then we create a roadmap to get you there. And we do incremental steps. It's not a big push. I don't want you to shift your life in such a way quickly. It's a slow process, because you have to retrain those muscles and those habits that we build up to get successful over here. And then let's see what doesn't work. And a part of my work, I call it the woo-woo part. There's a letting go process. There are things, there are people, there are beliefs that we have got to let go of. They no longer serve us. There are programs running in our mind that are running us. And we have to look at that and let it go. And then there's the forgiveness piece. Forgiveness is a huge part of this. Forgiveness is so important, because oftentimes our unworthiness is connected to things that we don't let go of and things that we don't forgive, because we're still feeling bad about something that happened in the past. And so we look at all of that. And so it's important to, just for your listeners, the first thing you want to do is get clear about where you are right now. Just pick 3 areas of your life. It could be your relationships. It could be business relationships. It could be friendships. Because as women, we don't just think about one thing. We think about all the things. Could be your relationship with your kids, just whatever it is, your finances, whatever it is. Just look at it and get real clear, and get out a pen and a piece of paper. Don't do it on computer. Make a list or a page, and just write down honestly what this is. So let's use relationships as an example, because that's what a lot of people, I want a partner. I want this, I want that. Okay, what do you have right now? What have you had in the past? What worked and what didn't work? What type of relationship do you want? And then you ask yourself, well, who do I have to be in order to have that relationship? And then that's the beginning point where you do the work. Who do I have to be in order to have this relationship? If I want a relationship with an Olympic athlete, well, Olympic athlete's not going to find me lounging at the pool, hanging out with my friends at the club. You know, so what do I have to do to even be in that vicinity of an Olympic athlete? And I'm just making something up, and what do I have to do to be in that vicinity? I often talk about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's relationship, right? She's an actress in Hollywood. He's a prince in Britain. How did they connect? They connected through philanthropy. They both had a passion for giving back. And that's how they connected through her. She did philanthropy, he did philanthropy. So putting yourself in that space, but you first have to recognize that you're not in that space and you're not in that orbit at all. So what do I need to do? What do I need to change? What do I need to forgive? And what do I need to let go of in order to get to my vision? Those are the questions that we have to ask ourselves. That's the self-discovery part of the program.
And I just wanted to ask, like, how do you tailor the coaching experience to address the unique challenges and goals of each individual you talk to?
Because although I have a framework, the person is the center of the framework. They're what fills out the framework. So I'm not there. When I ask you where are you right now? It's not my answer. It's not society's answer. It's your answer. Where are you right now? Where do you want to be? These are your visions and your dreams for your life. But it's challenging for women because we often think about our kids, our partners, our families. Well, I want my daughter to da da da. I want my husband to da da da. I want my wife to da 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 da. It's like, no, what do you want? Then it's, oh, okay, so we got to do some work there. But it's very individualized. And that's how I learned. I need you to focus on my stuff. Don't just give me this generic book and this generic, like, it's all about the question. One of my master teachers is Betty Spruill, and she taught me that it's not about the answer, it's about the question. And it's the same thing we learn in the Matrix. It's about the question. The question leads you down the path. It's not the answer, it's the question. So I start with a series of questions. It's just like any business in the intake form, with a series of questions. And once I see your responses to the questions, then I can say, okay, these are the areas that we're going to focus on and we're going to move on forward. And then all of the other responses that you have will fit in where they fit in. Because everything in your life is connected from beginning to end. Every decision you make now was a decision you learned how to make when you were a child. Every action or reaction that you have now always leads back to something in your childhood. I remember when when I learned transcendental meditation, my teacher noticed that I wasn't talking. She was asking questions, but I wasn't responding. And so she asked me to see me after class. And I was like, oh God, I'm in trouble. But she said, I noticed you're not talking. I said, what do you mean? In my head, I was. I had no idea that I was not participating. She said, no, you're literally just sitting there and nodding. You haven't opened your mouth. And so she took me through an exercise. And the exercise took me to the very genesis of why I was not talking. And when I got to the genesis and she showed me what it was and we walked through it and we talked through it, all of the sudden, now I can't shut up because it gets to the root of the problem. And there's always, for instance, if you keep stopping yourself, there's a reason for that. It's not because you don't have a good program. It's not because you're not smart enough. It's not because you're not worthy. There's actually something that happened that stopped you. And so now, instead of that other situation stopping you, you stop yourself. So let's examine that and see what that is. This is not therapy. This is me learning and cultivating and understanding that, especially for women of color, especially for Black women, we have to get back to what works for us when it comes to healing ourselves. And it's not modern therapy. No shade to therapists, but they don't study us enough to know how we think. They just don't. Everything in medicine is designed around white males. And so everything that they teach us is based off of how they think. We think completely differently. We experience life completely differently. So I have found that, like my master teacher taught me, Betty Spruill, it's about the question. So asking the right questions, not me asking the question, but also you asking yourself these questions. We can't even answer the simple question, what do you want out of life? Because I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, the answer has to do with somebody else, not yourself. So I help you get centered on yourself, and that's where we begin.
I truly understand now why it's soulful success and why this is kind of sounds like therapy, but it's not because like therapy really just like it's all about the brain, it's all about logic. But these questions you have to ask, these hurdles that you have to go through, and the work that you have to put through, it's like it's like an internal thing. It's really hard to understand yourself unless you're asking the right questions. And I get it now. Like I'm going to leave all your links down below for sure for anyone out there who's wanting to do a soulful success coaching. For anyone who needs it, the resources will be in our description. And just before I let you go, Monica, I wanted to ask, like, what's next for you? What's next for the coaching? What's next for the podcast? Anything you'd like to share with us?
What is next for the coaching is my calendar is open, and I would love helping anybody who feels like this is the direction for them. Make sure it's a clear direction. Don't just get hyped because you hear me and like, oh my God. Ask yourself, ask your soul, ask your higher self, is this person going to help me? And then make that decision. For the podcast, I'm working on new interviews right now, and I'm working on putting together, I want to do and I haven't even worked this completely out, but I want to do a self-care sexy series. So really make self-care fun, because it has become such a daunting task of healing your trauma. And I think that's very important. But I also think it needs to be a lifestyle, not just something we do in the moment. Self-care is healthcare, and it's something that we need to incorporate in our lives. So I just want to have fun with it and have conversations about making it more of a lifestyle than just a moment. I'm expanding out. I want to go into creating more of a community. So I might start a Patreon or a membership aspect of it, so that we can have the deeper conversations privately, not so publicly, because I think that there are conversations that we need to have that the public doesn't need to know about. So I'm working on building out a membership for that, so that it won't cost a lot of money, but it's going to take time and effort to put it together. And then as Black Women Amplified, I'm just trying to work with other companies so that they can really understand Black women as they reach out in this diverse atmosphere that we're going into. We lead a bit differently. Women of color lead differently. And I don't think that a lot of companies really understand. I think people read the books, they think they know us, but they don't. And I'm sure you experience that too. Like, "Oh, that's what you think we're doing, but that's not what we're doing." So I really want to do some business to business so that companies really understand Black women and how we think and how we operate and how they can best serve us. Instead of telling us what we need to tell them what we desire.
I love that. Thank you. And is there anything else you'd like to share to our audience? Anything at all that you'd love to share?
Yes, I have a Soulful Success blueprint that people can get. It's a free download, and I would love for them to have it. It's a 5-part, it's very simple, but it's just a series of questions. If you are feeling burnt out, overwhelmed, overtaxed, you don't feel passionate about what you're doing, it's just a series of questions that you can ask yourself, and you just make your time. I tell people, get your favorite beverage, get your snacks, um, turn off all of your distractions, and just start answering the questions from your heart. And they can go to www.monicawisdomhq.com/workbook. And it's a beautiful book that people can download for themselves. And then they will be put on my newsletter list, which is Soulful Success. That's another thing. I've started a newsletter, so it comes out every Friday. And then you will also get more information about the coaching, the opportunity to work with me, as well as what's going on in the Black Women Amplified world. And again, Black Women Amplified is for everybody. Any woman who desires to know more about themselves, Black Women Amplified is that place for them.
Thank you so much, Monica, for the time, for gracing our podcast and sharing your wisdom with our listeners. We appreciate it so much. And of course, thank you to everyone who listened today. This has been your host, Patricia. And remember, for all your professional and business and technical writing needs, there's only one way to go, and that's with the right direction. I'll see you guys soon.